Okay, well, so I am the owner of Unlimited Plumbing. I have a business partner, my brother-in-law, and yeah, so I'm a plumbing contractor here in Utah. But mostly what I would say, if I had to put it down to just a couple of items, what it really is, what we are in business, we really just take away people's problems. Like that's probably like my biggest thing is, taking away people's problems and so they don't have to. That's probably the biggest thing. And I just happen to do it through the venue of plumbing.
Okay.
That could sound really uninspiring when somebody's watching a video like, oh, you can't be plumbers. Oh, like, but it's just the experience that just tended to land in my lap, I guess you might say. And so I just ran with it, and here we are doing it that's what we do. So as far as for business goes. Yeah. So I went to, I never really woke up when I was a kid and was like, I want to be a plumber when I grow up. I went to a private school. Well, I went to public school until 7th grade. Then I went to a private school from 7th grade till, I guess I'd be from 12 years old till I was 15. And I graduated from this private school when I was 15. And I'm getting a phone call. I should turn my phone off. So I graduated from this private school at 15, wasn't sure what I was going to do. Another friend that I graduated with, he was working for a plumbing contractor up in Idaho, and he said, hey, why don't you come work with us? And I said, okay. So I started working with him. I was 15. I wasn't sure. I wasn't ready to go to college or anything like that. And so I just started working, and I was making good money. $5 an hour at the time. And anyways, but I started working full time with this plumbing contractor up in Idaho at that time. I was able to finish up my 3rd year of my apprenticeship. It does require plumbing trade is an apprenticeship program, and so that I was able to finish up my 3rd year before my mission. I served an LDS mission in Korea. Then I came home. My wife and I knew each other before. She had served a mission in Korea. I had served a mission in Korea. She had served a mission in Philadelphia, basically at the same time. And she got back. I got back, and we got married within 6 months. And 6 months after that, I got my 4th year done of my apprenticeship. And then about another 6 months later, our first child was born. And then like 2 or 3 months later, we moved down to Utah and started up our own business. So that's how I got started. And then just a couple of years after that, so in 2004, we had milestones that happened every year. 2006 and 7, we started building our own home. I moved in 2007. Anyways, had some awesome experiences, and it's just been great. It's been it's not for the faint of heart owning your own business, but boy, I have to put this one quote in here. I was reading a book called it's by a Jewish rabbi. It's something like the 10 Commandments of Financial Prosperity. I'll find the book, but really good book. I think it's by a guy named Daniel or David Lapin, and he said that businessman, the direct translation into Hebrew, it actually means man of faith. And I really believe that is the case in business. Is like it takes a ton of faith to go forward and just trust and trust in yourself, but also trust in God and just a belief that you can actually accomplish. Anyway, so like it's been one of the best things for my entire life in personal development is owning my own business. Okay, sorry. The name of the book, I'm just going to go back to it. It's called Thou Shalt Prosper. Thou Shalt Prosper by Rabbi Daniel Lapin, L-A-P-I-N. So sorry, I figured I better get that right. But so some of the books that really have helped me. Let me just give you the reason why people should read books. I don't spend a ton of time in front of a book. I do spend some time. I spend most of my time listening while I'm driving. But here's the reason too, is you don't have enough time in your life to learn everything through the school of hard knocks. And so if you want to get things, get to where you accomplish things in your life, then you've got to take the condensed success from other people, which generally tends to come in through books. And is probably the best method to get that. Maybe some podcasts, but here and there, but the books is huge. So the things that really, and this is how I kind of come to this realization. My business partner and I, we struggled for years. And eventually we just kind of got to the point where I said, okay, look, we struggled for years, not just in our business, but we struggled in our partnership. We're just totally different people. And I ended up basically saying, look, you go do this responsibility over here. I'm going to take care of this responsibility. It's like we kind of split the business in two different responsibilities. And that was so good for me. When we did that, I also, after we kind of separated, we weren't working with each other every single day, I basically said, look, Phillip, you stink at teamwork. And so you gotta get good at this thing if you want to grow your business. So I just went onto like iTunes on my phone. I was like, okay, business books, and just picked the first one and listened to it. And that first book was The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, and that was so good. It's really good for me. The next book I would recommend is probably Leadership and Self-Deception. That book was hugely transformational for me. That book instantly transformed my whole life. It totally changed my partnership with my business, my business partnership, and it changed him as well. Like it was so good for us. Like you live so much of your life, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't even realize how much it's hurting you. And so just a little bit of information, even if you listen to a book and it takes 5 hours to listen to it, but you only gain this tidbit of 5 minutes that can totally change your life. Like it's just priceless. Well, it's kind of crazy because we're really taught, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And the reality is okay, that just means you'll do that thing for the rest of your life. And that's actually a poor man's thinking. It's incorrect thinking. It doesn't allow itself to grow and to real kind of like I'm going to call it a virtuous cycle where it actually produces good. It actually leads towards almost a decreasing cycle or circle of influence rather than an increasing circle of influence. But yeah, that statement right there, I absolutely love. That changed my entire life. It is like a slap in the face, like, you're kidding me. Like I don't want to do this part of the thing in my business the rest of my life. You've got to get beyond that. And so, and that means you also have to be open to failure as well. That's probably the biggest struggle in business. Yeah, usually there's a book called The E-Myth, really good book, Entrepreneurial Myth, by Michael. I can't remember. Michael Gerber, and he basically talks about business quite a bit. Really good book for reference. But one of the things is the reality is you've got to be able to get beyond yourself. If you don't, you're never going to grow a business. And you have to be okay with people failing. That's the only way they will learn, and it's the only way you will learn is when you allow other. That's the only way you'll learn as a manager or as a business owner is by allowing other people below you to fail. That's so hard. But this is why I was referring to the E-Myth. Is usually most people when they start their own business, they start out as a technician. Let me just give you an example. As a plumber, I was like, I knew how to do the plumbing part of things, the technical side of things. We have this, I know the code, how to go to a job and do the job. And that's really good. So you become technically trained. But the problem is when you start your own business, you have skills of being technically trained and knowing how to do it, but you don't have skills of actually developing other people and letting other people learn. And so you're not really trained in the entrepreneurial skills or even the manager skills. That's what the E-Myth talks about: the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur. And if you're not trained in each of those, most people, they start their own business and they're only trying to succeed at the technical level when they need to be able to let go of that a little bit and allow other people to gain those skills while they're focusing on their management and the entrepreneurial vision side. It's a lot easier to know it than to do it, but sometimes it takes a lifetime to accomplish it, even if you do know it. Sure. I think with the thing is why most small business owners are a little overwhelmed by allowing people to fail is because to them it means money out of their pocket. It might even mean that they don't have so much food on their table. That can be really tough. But that's kind of a scarcity mentality. You have to be okay with a little bit of waste. You have to take waste and development of people, and which one's more important to you. And if you're willing to be okay with development of people, then you'll have a little bit of waste. But the reality is your development of people will eventually get to the point where to being a successful business owner, and then eventually the waste will go down. That won't be minimized, but at first, I have guys and they'll be like, "Oh man, we made this mistake," and I'll say, "Hey, I love this quote. It's helped me a ton to have the right mentality. Is like that's the only way we learn. It's all right, no problem at all."
Great.
So and a lot of times even just saying, next time you'll do better and you'll be better next time. Yeah, they tend to actually take responsibility. If they don't, then they're probably not the right employee. But usually most people that are good and want to be a good employee that you would want to have around, they tend to be like a sigh of relief. They're not going to get chewed out. And then they take more responsibility. But if you do the opposite where you actually lash out at them and be like, you just cost me this much money or whatever, then they actually live in fear. They'll try less, and they'll actually start to fail more because they're not actually taking responsibility. And it's better to let people fail and learn. And my experience is, we were working at this hotel together. That was probably the biggest project I'd ever done, as far as one project goes. And I don't know, maybe I'm just too. I tend to see everything in my relationship with God. And so, for me, it's like, okay, I'm thinking, God knows I want to progress, but the only way I'm going to progress is if He helps me, He takes over, in a sense. And so, for so many years, I tried to get over this hump, this, I guess we'll call it resistance, maybe that's a better word. And it's just, I couldn't do it on my own as far as and it's even noticeable in my net worth of my business. I look at the reports. And so you can even see the exact resistance, that level of resistance. Seem like year after year, man, we can't seem to get over that. And for me, it was really frustrating. And I felt like God just had to be like, okay, I'm going to give you so much work that you cannot do it on your own. You will have to let go. It's impossible. And that's about that time period when you were working for me. That was one of the things where really it happened. I still was working crazy hours, but I had let go so much. It was so amazing. And we had our best year as far as profitability and everything like that. And we had a lot of mistakes. We had to throw away we had waste from fittings that had been used that glued together that, can't be unglued or whatever. And so, but we learned so much, and it was just an amazing experience to actually let go of that and be okay with mistakes. No, I probably would have to say my parents always lived as this businessman, so to speak, a man of faith, I guess. One year they just really felt like they needed to get their house paid off. And so they'd always basically been business owners. And one year they just started working like crazy, and praying and just, anyways, they just worked like crazy in their business. And, opportunities just opened itself up. And they paid off their house in a year. It was crazy. And I look at that, the whole 9-to-5 job type thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. As far as being an employee, sometimes they're called entrepreneurs. You can work for somebody else and still have the mentality of an entrepreneur. but just watching my parents as far as entrepreneurs, and just with faith going forward, like I haven't accomplished what they accomplished, but I look at them and I go, man, I don't know how much I've been influenced just by simply being their child, but I'm sure that's been a huge part of it. Another person that I've currently, I don't know if I'd say this person has been like one of the greatest inspirations in my life, but one of the persons that is currently an inspiration in my life is Jordan Peterson, clinical psychologist from Canada. One of the things he talks about is taking responsibility. And one thing he says is that you got to find the heaviest item to bear, the heaviest burden, and you just bear it. And you're going to take on more than you possibly can accomplish and even personally hold. But the reality is like you'll get stronger. It's okay. And it's okay to feel overwhelmed. But the reality is I think we live in this world where we've kind of, the world has pandered to us. Oh, everything's got to be easy and we got to like it. The reality is like, yeah, right. It's time to grow up and take life and just be responsible for it, and don't blame it on anybody else, and just just take the heaviest thing that you possibly can bear. And maybe that, some people might be living in the midst of complete despair, and they're not going to be able to do much, so to speak. Who cares? It's all right. Just take something that you can do and just bear it, and just take that responsibility. Simply, whether it's just, it might be just a chore just to clean your room. That might be totally devastating depending on a person's psychological stability. But starting with that idea of taking responsibility is just huge. I've actually loved listening to him. He's given me a ton of, I guess, courage, you might say. It's probably the best thing. And in all honesty, I don't know how much I would change, because the reality is that each of those lessons were so organic for us. They might have been out of foolishness of decisions we made at the time, but the reality is those foolish decisions ended up becoming the organic, not forced, but just naturally created the situation for us to actually grow and cause us to need to change, I guess you might say. I don't know that I would change a thing. I think I just wish I could have got here a little sooner, and to get over myself, thinking that I had to be the guy who did it all, instead of allowing. I look back at all the employees I've had over the years, and I feel a little sad. And I've had some really good ones, and the reasons why they didn't stick around is because it was like I was trying to be everything, and I didn't help them to become everything. And that's probably something I would have changed earlier on, because there was no benefit of just continually hitting your head against the wall, bam. But I had to get to the point where I was so full of myself and be willing to put myself down. And I guess the reason, let me explain that. I really enjoy the technical side of plumbing. I enjoy the excellence of it, and to me, for me, it's like an art thing. People might not be able to, relate with the idea of plumbing, for sure, obviously, but most people have something in their life where it's like an art to them, and when you get done with it, people look and say, "Wow, that's amazing." I get that a lot, actually. And people say, wow, this is like an art. They come into a mechanical room and they see a boiler system or something like that, and they're like, man, this is beautiful. This looks like it comes out of a submarine ship or something like that, just well organized, well planned, all that stuff. I don't know, I love that part of it. So I love the technical part of it, and I just wish that I would have been able to realize that it's more, the only way for me to get where I want to go is to be able to help develop other people who can, in a sense, create that as their art. Some of the other things I probably would have done is I probably would have got some education on running a business. And I don't mean I wouldn't even say go to a college and get an education that way. Go to the people that are in the fields that you want to be in and figure out how to get them in where they are. Like, we got involved with a company that really gears towards helping plumbers, heating and air conditioning people, and electricians to really grow their business. And we paid a big price for it, but the education and the training and stuff like that, being part of the group, but man, we learned so much from them. And so those are probably some of the things that I wish I would have done earlier on, is actually got some help. But usually when you're starting out, you think, oh, I got this. And so the reality is when you say that, you end up getting it, all of it. Yeah. Learn it on your own, like,
figure it out.
Or not. So 2008, we ended up doing a job. It wasn't so much from the recession. It just kind of all happened during the time of the recession. We ended up getting a job for a customer, and it was this really fairly large job. Not just a normal plumbing job, it was a larger job for a homeowner with some radiant floor heating and some specialty items. And anyways, the guy ends up getting cancer and he dies in the midst of the project. We were owed about a year's salary. And his wife claims bankruptcy. We get a letter from the government saying, sorry, you can't ever collect from this person. That was tough because we'd already paid from our business. We'd already paid ourselves the wages of all the time we spent on this job. But we still owed our suppliers. And we had all the materials and everything like that. It's like we can go pull out plumbing on a person's home, and I don't think the law allows us to do that. But anyways, so that was a tough time period. I started, it was interesting because I didn't know what to do. It took us a year to kind of get a game plan of what to do. But in the meanwhile, we just kept downwardly, spiraling downward. I don't know which way, if I should go this way or go this way. But we just kept spiraling downward, really tough. And so, and then I found myself that in that moment, that the way I responded to people in regards to this situation, like if I'd go to another job for somebody else and I tell them, there's always this like a friendly talk, I guess, between subcontractors and contractors, and you're talking about what's going on, and I'd go around and say, man, we got shafted for a whole year's salary. That's profits, and it was interesting. I found myself getting into what this gal Laurel Langmeyer, I don't know really if she's currently a leadership person or not, but at the time I ended up around that time period I ended up getting some of her stuff, and not that it really helped me get through it. It just allowed me to identify what was happening. And so if you had your normal progress cycle where you're making progress and you're growing and that kind of stuff, what was happening, or maybe I should do it this way, you have this cycle where you're constantly growing, but in this moment I got caught in what's called a story cycle. This is what Laurel Langmeyer calls it. And the story cycle, instead of allowing you to keep going up, you go up and you continue to repeat the same story everywhere you go. You tell people, oh man, this is what happened to me. This bankruptcy happened, and now I can't collect on it. I got all this to figure out how to pay my suppliers back and all this stuff. And instead of continuing on, like, you get stuck in this story cycle. And that's where I was. The damage wasn't the financial damage. The damage was the being stuck in the story cycle, and not continuing on. Because the only way out of the story cycle is not to talk about it. And be stuck in that emotional, mental struggle. The only way out is continuing on. that's the reality of it. And I didn't know how to mentally get over that, but I look back now and realized that there were some things strategically placed in my path. I just said, like, God just orchestrated to overcome that. I just totally believe that. And, you know, if a person doesn't believe in God, that's fine. But eventually they'll have to look back at their life and they'll have to realize, you know, there's more than what, like, it's impossible for us to accomplish all these things on our own. You know, the reality is like there's only so many things you can control. And then there's a lot of things that you can't control. And eventually you have to submit to those things that you can't control. And that's a huge lesson. And so this was a moment of us learning how to submit to whatever life gave us. I tend to just believe that God just gave us these experiences and for our real growth. And so what ended up happening is in the meantime of this amount that we couldn't collect from a customer of ours, we got into more debt with our business. We ended up not having hardly any money personally, so we had we didn't service our van, our personal van. So one day we were going to get some parts from our supply house, and our van engine blew up because we didn't have enough oil in our van. And so then, bring on to this whole other matter, now we don't have a personal vehicle. Anytime we want to make a trip, we got to ride in the plumber mobile, plumber's truck, and that was not a classy look, I'll tell you that. And then what ended up happening is this, that same, like this is all within a year and a half, 2 years time period. We had bought this special boiler for our house that heats our home, and it's not a normal boiler. And anyways, when we bought it, they sold us some corrosion inhibitor to reduce corrosion and prolong the life of the boiler and everything like that. Well, it ended up being the wrong stuff. Instead of actually decreasing in corrosion, it actually increased it. So here we had a brand new home, 2007. We're in it. 2009, our boiler's dead. It was like a $10,000 boiler. We don't have heat in our home in the end of the springtime. So we have all these things that happen. Now this ended up becoming a blessing to us. As far as talking about getting out of this story cycle. So I decided, you know, we figured out how to at least get some temporary heat in our home for the last of winter. And anyways, I decided I'm going to take a welding class, and this welding class, and I'm going to fix my boiler. I'm going to redesign it. I'm going to fix my boiler. I've never taken a welding class in my entire life. And so I go to the Snow College South in Richfield to their welding department, sign up for some evening classes that they had twice a week in the evening. And I went and did that, got some training on that, and then that class was over, and then in the summertime I rebuilt my boiler. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that whole experience of the bankruptcy, the story cycle, oh, let me give you one more thing, learn how to weld, do something completely you've never done before, and all of a sudden I'm out of the story cycle. And so that was huge for me. I didn't realize it, but it totally just snatched me out. And so I'd say when I'm in that situation that whether you can intentionally do it or not, I don't know. I would imagine you can. But then this was the very first time, like where we had this, was like our very first hard thing as me. And I don't even know if my business partner, because I mostly took care of the managing of the business, but of me and my wife. This was like the very first thing. It was really, really hard. Since then, I haven't got stuck in that story cycle. I kind of, you know, when something like that happens again, you're like, oh no, story cycle. You're like, oh, I've been here before. Let's try something new, or just realize, don't focus on it, let's keep going. You realize most things aren't permanent, and so you just keep on going. So anyways, that was one of the things as far as the low points of our life. I look back at that, man, like, let me just say, a year's salary, that was cheap education for the lessons we learned. So that's the business thing, the personal thing that I have to say as far as a low point, but is also kind of a high point in my life. I've got 4 kids. It really took me my 4th child to kind of really enjoy being a dad. And I remember one time with my 4th child, it wasn't something that I just intentionally decided I wanted to do. It was like my heart just changed and I actually wanted to be a better dad. And so I found myself really enjoying just holding him when he was a baby, and playing with him. And I remember one day being up in the kitchen and looking at the calendar, and man, just as I'm thinking about it, I remember one day just being holding my little son. His name's Timothy, and I just remember looking at the calendar and seeing pictures of my kids from when they were younger, and just going like, I don't remember that. And that was like, I just sat in the kitchen and I just bawled, or stood in the kitchen, whatever. I just bawled, and I was so sad that it wasn't like I was intentionally not wanting to be a father, but that was kind of like a low point in my life. Like, I'm so grateful also that I have come to really enjoy being a dad. But it was also it was like a high, but it was also a low of, oh man, like, you don't get an opportunity to do this again. Like, you know, people say it's never too late, but the reality is, no, that's not true. Like, there is too late. Like, you've got one shot to really do this thing, and let's do it. Let's do it the very best. It doesn't mean we're not going to fail and stuff like that, but like, you got to go forward with the idea that this might be the only shot you got. And so it was kind of like a low time, but it was also a high time as well. I'll always cherish the day just being in the kitchen, looking at a calendar, pictures of my kids, and just crying. But we can't change our past and how the journey we're on. We just can only just accept it and submit to it and be okay with it and just continue on going forward. So, and trust that the bigger picture will give us what we need to. You know, like, God will give us what we need to in the moment that we need. Yeah. So those are 2 things. I'm going to give you a quote. It doesn't really have. It doesn't have anything directly to do with this, but I love it so much. Got on my phone. Basically, it says something like this: I believe that I'm divinely guided. That I will always take the right road, and make the right decisions. And I think you have to be okay with that. That sometimes the wrong decisions are really the right decisions in the long road of your development. Now, this only, I think, applies to people who are really trying. People who aren't really trying, they're actually trying to fail, I guess you might say. I don't know if it applies. It might, I guess. But I think for most people who are sincerely trying, you just have to believe that you will always make the right decision and you'll always take the right road. It doesn't mean that it won't, like, it might not be the wisest, but it will probably be the best thing for your development, your growth. But if you've got a moral compass and a guideline to stick to as you're really striving to follow to that, then I just believe you always make the right decision. Maybe I'm not right in that, but it sure seemed to allow me to let go of some of the things I can't control and just trust the process and be okay with it. Probably the best way to be grateful when things are going well is to have experiences when things are not going well. That's probably the best way. Like, you can try to psych yourself up and make this list of all these things you're going to do, but the reality is if you're not being grateful for when things are going well, then just wait for life to kind of send you some experiences that aren't so exciting. I don't know. I guess some of the things, and when you do that, the cool thing is it's not, then when you have those tough experiences, we all tend to like reject these tough experiences. Like, man, those are awesome. They're not easy. But it's almost like when you're having those experiences, you can just kind of relax and say, okay, God knows who He wants me to be. and I'm not talking, when I refer to God, I'm not talking about a specific religion. I'm just talking about you and somebody else who on the other side that you can't see that's actually like helping you along this journey, whatever you want to call that. And but I just believe that some of these experiences that we have, they're just for our good. I would probably say most people worry that they have to have it right before they begin. That is a disaster for procrastination, and so I would say take what you've got, and you have to just believe that what you have right now is enough to begin. And so take what you've got and just go for it. And the reality is because what happens is most people, I don't know about most people, some people, and myself, I'm kind of in this. I tend to be in this category. Most of it is that we take and say, all right, before I begin, I've got to have everything figured out. I've got to do enough studying, all this stuff, and then I'll start once it's all ready. But the reality is you'll never be ready. You just, and you don't even know what you need to be ready. So like, you don't have enough feedback. So okay, first of all, the first step is, as far as this venture, first of all, you gotta have the mentality that it's going to be worth it. Like, you don't want this safe, secure life. The reality is you want a life of intentionality, of purpose, and of your own making is the reality of it. And so take something, and it might not be the perfect thing, but just go for it. Like, I would never have thought plumbing would be my thing. And sometimes I think it might not be my thing, but I really enjoy it. It's just the venue that I've chosen, and I'm just grown so much from it. And it will just lead to other things that maybe aren't plumbing in the future. But just take what you've got and just take the very first thing and just run with it. Now, as you run with it, this is what, dare to venture, just try, just be willing to go. And then the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to get some feedback. The feedback will show itself in the way of friction. So the areas as you're trying, you see the friction, just notice, oh, okay, for me to get what I want, apparently this friction is the feedback as to where to put my intentions, where to put my development. And so the feedback might be, the friction might be like in business, it might be people don't seem to want my services for whatever the business is. So then your first thing with that friction is you got to figure out, okay, so why do people want my services? That's like the very first thing. Like, you got to figure that out. Like, that's and try to hone that in or whatever. So I think you just have to be willing to go, take the feedback that comes, and then work on those things that are the feedback is giving you, which usually comes in the form of friction. Then I guess the next thing would just be keep on going, like as far as a dare to venture. You don't have to worry about an investment being wasted. Anything you try right now is not. Let me give you a story. Man, I wish I could remember this guy's name. I could find it out later or whatever, but man, he was like a major CEO of like GE or something like that. I can't remember his name. But basically, one time he gets a phone call, and the guy on the lines just says, "Hey, the factory in such and such a city just blew up," and the guy says, "Okay," and he basically says, "All right, I want the manager of the factory, the person overseeing it, I want him to come and see me." Like, so the guy ends up leaving, and he goes after everything had been taken care of, and he goes to where the owner, the CEO, or I guess she's the CEO of the company, and the CEO starts drilling him. Okay, so what did you do here? And what did you, like, it cost this guy millions of dollars, like multi-millions of dollars to lose his factory. And it's, what did you do here? when this happened, like, and he just went through the whole process of what happened. And so they get done with this hour or two long interview, whatever, and the CEO's like, okay, sounds good. Well, we will be in touch next week. And the guy's like, you mean you're not going to fire me? And the CEO says, are you kidding me? I just spent like $2 million on a factory for your education. There's no way I'm firing you right now. It would be too much of an investment loss for me. And so I just look at that right there, and I just think there's no investment that's lost. You might start in company A and give it your all. You might start your own business and give it your all, and then the reality is 2 years down the road, you're like, this isn't for me. You might think, I just wasted 2 years of my life, and you could get in this story cycle and not keep progressing. But the reality is, you just have to trust that those experiences will be experiences that are investments for your future. When that payout day is, that's to be known, but it will happen, and you'll see that with huge and grateful eyes, I guess, and a grateful heart, realizing how grateful for those experiences, those failures. So that would be as far as the DARE adventure, as far as on the business part of things. As far as the DARE adventure for life, I just read a great book. Listen to one. It's actually a book that my son is reading in his school. He's doing a charter school, an online charter school, and the book is called Love Does. And as far as on a personal level, I think that's probably one of the best lessons is don't get so caught up in all the things that you just love, just act. That nothing has to be perfect, it just does. It doesn't plan and take forever to figure things out, it just acts. And it acts with what it has. Great story. That book right there on a personal level, I think is probably really good, healthy for families. Especially for fathers to figure out how to really develop. And this DARE adventure, dare to make your family experience like exciting and enjoyable and fun and make your family laugh.
Awesome.
Because they'll always be grateful for your dad jokes. And I'm into music as well. And I often said, if I write a song, I think it would be entitled Unnoticed. And probably the reason why, most of the world is selling this bag of goods of become a doctor, become a lawyer, or this really fancy looking life. You can have this lifestyle of this kind of investing, and then you can spend the rest of your life on the beaches of the world, and I'm sure there's some good of gracing the beach of the world with your presence, but there's part of me that's just like, where's the value that it adds to society? And I guess the reason why I mention that is I see a lot of fathers who struggle to provide for their families. And a lot of times they're doing things that they don't want to really do. There's nothing glorious about it. In fact, they're often unnoticed and underappreciated. Even else, like for example, even today, we've got the things of everybody's all about immunizations and how much good is done in the world. But the reality is nobody ever thinks and takes into consideration. Actually, I bet the thing that does the most good in the world, has the most good in the world as far as people's health, has probably been the simple things of, plumbers figuring out how to get clean water to people's homes and to get rid of sewage. Like, that sounds really crazy. You might be just like, oh man, he is really hyped up on this plumber thing. But the reality is most of us, we have no idea how some of these things, these foundations, happen in the world, in society. I have met a lot of people who work their tails off in construction, and a lot of ways, my heart breaks for them because they're not educated well. They don't read a whole lot of books, or if any. A lot of times their speech can be a little poor and crude. But there are also a lot of smart, a lot of totally capable people. So I think that a notice thing right there, I don't know why it tends to resonate with me over and over and over again. But I just say notice people and just be grateful for people that make a difference. You don't even realize how they make a difference in your life. That's probably the biggest thing. Notice your spouse, and notice your children, and and this journey of life is a heart thing. It's a heart thing, and you got to figure out how to have your heart right. Otherwise, you're just going to live your life in misery. That has nothing to do with hardly anything else I've said as far as business. But the reality is this life is a heart thing. And your heart's got to be right. I do personally believe that there are some things in our lives that we can fix on our hearts, but I also believe there are some things that I'm just going to say that only God can heal in our hearts to make them better, and particularly as we want them to heal. So, our hearts got to change. We got to quit playing game of politics and start learning how to love people and listen and talk. I think you got to be brave. As a parent, you've got to be brave. You have to be brave. Now, you can totally discount what I'm going to say, like if you want to. But I think the reality is we don't have the luxury of not being able to think for ourselves. So, like maybe 100 years ago, or 50 years ago, we had that luxury. But the world is so much more complex, and if we don't learn how to think for ourselves, the reality is we will just be part of somebody else's. What might you say? Plans for us instead of us living our lives. Now, this is my experience in plumbing. I've dealt with a lot of young men who struggle. Like I've had a lot of employees who struggle to figure out their thing, and I look at them and I'm just like, they come a lot of times because they've had another young man that's worked for me, and they're like, hey, I don't know if it'll work, but go work for Phillip, because at least he'll be a place where you can kind of get some great experience, and maybe you can figure out some of these things. My greatest ministry has nothing to do with plumbing. My greatest ministry has to do with actually helping people. Here's the pitfall for most young people as they listen to these things. They think that they've got to figure this out themselves. So like, for example, what do I want to do, or what's my mission? Like I kind of mentioned I've got a ministry. I don't mean that officially. It just seems like it's just something I've observed in my life. And I think there's a portion of that you can create, but there's also a portion of that is not yours to create. So like, for example, it's kind of like an archaeology dig, I guess the best way to say it. Most people they're looking at young people like, we're ready to attack life, all this kind of stuff. And they say, okay, down under the ground is this archaeology dig, and you're going to be able to know what your life's going to look like. And so they start thinking about, what's this going to look like? I bet it's going to look like this or whatever. And the reality is just start digging. And you're going to find one part of the archaeology dig, and you're like, whoa, this is really cool. You're going to find pieces here and here. You're like, this does not seem to make sense. And it's not, life is not like, if you want to call it ministry, it's not like this thing that you create completely, because you don't even know like all of your gifts and talents. It's like the things that life just throws at you, and you start to see things here and there that God puts in your path. And then all of a sudden you're like, at first, I don't know how these relate. Like for me, one of the things is music. I absolutely love music. I love singing, and I'm extremely good at it. And so I'm like, how does that relate to plumbing? And most people, they hear what I'm saying right now as far as, oh, he says he's good at singing, but like yeah, most people say that, like whatever. But like whatever. But like I don't say that out of boasting. I just say that as a humility of just acknowledging, I guess you might say. And so like, how does that work with plumbing? It does not seem to work. And so I think you just have to go forward. And most young people want to have the answers before they begin digging. And the reality is they just got to start digging. And as they dig, life will give them the answers as they're looking for it. And because you can be like, I've seen a lot of people are like, man, what's my mission in life? And they start analyzing people like George Washington and stuff like that. George Washington never sat around and thought, what do I want my mission in life to be? In reality, is he just went out and did things in life. He took the opportunities that came, and he made the best of them. And one opportunity led to the next and the next. And so I just say, take the opportunities that come and figure out how to make them. So when do you know how to quit? That's the other thing. Like, I think probably the best advice I'd ever heard on that, as I was listening to something in my truck, and it was because there are times that things you need to quit. But if you just always quit when things get hard, and you take that as evidence that you shouldn't be doing it, the reality is that's probably the evidence you should be doing it. But sometimes you might have a child who you want them to play the piano or whatever, and they're doing it, and they know, like, this is kind of dumb. Why are we doing this? But I think you just have to set a goal. We've got a son, and he plays violin. We've got 3 children who play the violin, and really good too. Our oldest is 15. And anyways, our son, who is 14 or 13, he'll be 14 in June. He was doing violin, and he got to the point where he's like, I don't want to do it anymore. We said, if we said okay, then we would instill in him the behaviors, or confirm in him the behaviors of quitting. And so we said, all right. We had heard this on an audio because and it was like we were listening. My wife and I were driving down the road, and we're listening. We're like, oh, that's the answer we've been looking for. How do you know when to quit? And this lady was a sumo wrestler, a Canadian sumo wrestler. She was telling this story. I don't even remember her name. It was really good though. It was a really good story. And her dad said, "You set a goal, and you will not quit until you accomplish that goal. And then once you accomplish that goal, you can decide whether you want to keep doing it or not." So it allows you to not quit as a quitter, but to quit because you accomplished your goal, and then because it might not be the thing for you, and then you move on to the next one. It's just something else. And that was fascinating. So our son Adam, we said, all right, Adam, as soon as you finish the first book of Suzuki violin lessons, then you can quit if you want to. He says, okay. And it took him a long time. He finally accomplished it. And they're like, okay, so do you want to quit, or do you want to keep going? He says, I think I want to keep going. And so I think that's probably like some of the advice is like knowing when to quit and when not to quit. Like that's a really tough thing. But just I'd say there's a little bit of guidance when you're saying, when Phillip Winters is just saying, keep going, keep going, keep going. There is a time when you should quit and do something different. But I think most of us, we give up too early. I'm so grateful I didn't give up in my business as far as in my partnership and stuff like that. Like, man, I learned so many awesome lessons that nobody I could never have learned any other way. And so like I wouldn't trade it. And not just my partnership, the lessons there, but like developing as a person, man, priceless. And so I think we take the steam off of we relieve the pressure way too early. And maybe even where we shouldn't even relieve the pressure at all. That pressure is meant to be there as a tool for motivation. So